As the conflict between Hamas and Israel continues to intensify, Hamas is now warning the world to, quote, halt all international flights to Israel. Joining us today to discuss the latest from Gaza is Avi Melamed. He is a fellow of the Middle East Intelligence Program at the Eisenhower Institute in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us today, Avi.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
So explain to us the current state of affairs between Israel and Palestine.
Currently, the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, as you probably know, have collapsed. Totally, we have just witnessed in the last 24 hours the renewal of the fights between Israel and Hamas. Hundreds of rockets have been launched from Hamas, from the Gaza Strip by Hamas and other Palestinian factors targeting Israeli cities and communities. As you're probably aware, there was an Israeli, important strike last night by the military head of Hamas, Mohammed Deif. There are different reports coming in regarding the final outcome of that attack. Some indicators may hint that Mohammed Deif was killed during that attack.
And what, if anything, can America do?
I think that America has to realize that in the end of the day, this round between Israel and Hamas is to a large extent a microcosmos of the biggest or a bigger struggle that takes place today in the region. Roughly saying, to put it in a nutshell, what we see today is a struggle over stability in the region when you have on the one hand an axis of Arab entities like Egypt, like Saudi Arabia, like the Emirates, like Kuwait, like Gulf states, like Jordan, and also Israel that are looking for stability on the one hand. And on the other hand, we have an entities like Qatar, Turkey, and semi-entities like Hamas or Hezbollah or Islamic Jihad that are basically interested in instability. The round between Israel and Hamas has to be understood in that perspective because it stands for this large struggle that goes on today between these two camps over stability in the region. And I think that this is something that the U.S. has to understand. Another important thing that has to be understood, in the end of the day, it is Egypt that holds the passage, and practically speaking, physically speaking, and literally speaking. And if you want to even symbolically speak.
So Secretary of State John Kerry has gone over there to try to work out, ceasefire, truce deals. How do you think the administration has responded? What do you make of Secretary of State John Kerry's effort in trying to find a resolution?
The United States has and should have a significant role in the end of the day of stabilizing the situation. It's in the United States' strategic interest. Obviously, the United States has a lot of interest. There's a lot of allies and friends in the region. One has to take into consideration also the United States has a legitimate interest in both Qatar and Turkey, but as well, of course, Saudi Arabia and Egypt. And in the end of the day, the United States has to come up with a balancing formula that basically brings into consideration all the interests of the United States. One way or another, it should be clear that it is the United States' strategic interest to be able to be perceived as a factor that supports stabilizing the situation in the Middle East. It is no secret that, unfortunately, in the last couple of years, the United States policy is perceived as incohesive, incomprehensive by many factors in the Middle East. To a large extent, many factors in the Middle East basically views today the United States as a declining force. I think it's the United States' interest to make whatever it takes to make sure that the United States' interests are kept and secure in the region. One of the ways to do that, of course, is to play much more proactive and clear position in how do you gain this situation where things are stabilized as best as possible. I think that the United States administration should realize that the name of the game today in the Middle East, at least as far as the major entities are concerned, like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the Gulf states, Israel, and others, Jordan, is stability. And I think that the United States has to go along this line and fulfill that.
What do you think's next for Israel and Hamas? Where do you see this going in the next few days?
It's not clear, actually. I mean, on the one hand, both sides obviously are interested in ending this round. On the other hand, it seems like to a certain extent, both sides are trapped in kind of like an inner loop, and mostly Hamas is trapped in kind of like almost, I would say, viciously. The problem of Hamas is that he was entering this round out of a very, very deep crisis. He is now even in a deeper crisis because he gained no substantial achievements. He's paying substantially price. the people of the Gaza Strip are paying substantial price. Hamas is a kind of an organization that there are two kinds of terror organization. One is a terror organization that is not dialoguing with reality. ISIS is an example. The other one is a terror organization that dialogue with reality. Hamas is a terror organization that dialogue with reality. In the end of the day, the question is whether the practical consideration will outcome or will dominate the final decision that Hamas will make regarding the way to end this round. Israel, on the other hand, is also to a certain extent, the government currently is trapped in a kind of like a loop, because on the one hand, the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli Minister of Defense, as well as the Chief of Staff, are not interested in launching a massive Israeli ground operation that will result in the collapse of Hamas for different reasons. While on the other hand, Israel, of course, as the Prime Minister said, Israel's ultimate interest as of now is to restore quiet and security for the people of Israel. Preferably, of course, in a diplomatic, non-lethal means. It apparently will be achieved as an outcome of the combination of both use of military might as well as the diplomatic moves in the region.
All right, well, we will be keeping our eye out on this. Thank you so much for joining me today, Avi. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm joining you from the studios of the I-24 in Tel Aviv, Jaffa. Wonderful evening here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For PJTV, I'm Michelle Fields. Thank you so much for watching.